Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel for another awesome video. Today's aim is estimate the sums and differences of fractions. Today's first problem is Mr. Smith ran 5/6 kilometer on Saturday and 1/5 on Sunday. About how many kilometers did Mr. Smith run altogether? Estimate to the closest half. So what this means is we have to first figure out what our fractions are and how close are they to a whole, zero, a half, or whole. So in order to do that, I suggest for you to then take the fraction. We're going to do that one first, 5/6. So that means our denominator tells us how many parts of that it was split into. So it's a number 6, which means we have 6 parts on our number line. So our number line will start with a 0, and it's going to end with a 1. And again, the 6 means how many times this line is split up before we get to the whole. So I'm just going to make my splits so we can have 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 would be our whole. All right, so at our whole, since we have a 6, our denominators for each one of these are all 6s, okay? So this would be 6/6, which would actually mean 1. This is going to be 5/6. This would be 4/6. This is 3/6. I'm going backwards, I apologize. And here's our 1/6, and here is our 0. So we also need to determine where our half would be. So you can look at this 2 different ways. But I'm going to tell you, to me, the best way. The best way is to always take your denominator. We have a 6. And just divide that by 2. And when you do that, that will put you halfway into wherever you need to be at using whatever number. And since ours is 6, we have 6 in the house. We have 2 on the outside. How many groups of 2 can we get out of 6?
3 groups.
We can get 3 groups. Therefore, where our 3 is at, this mark right here, is where our half mark would be. So we have our 0, we have our half mark, and we have our 1. Now, if you know anything, then you know only even numbers are going to be divided by 2. So that's where you always could just take your denominator, divide it by 2, and that will give you a right on point in the middle what number it is. 3, that's where your half is. If it's not an even number, then it's going to give you somewhere in the middle. Why? Because they don't divide equally by 2. So for this problem it did. So our half mark is at the number 3. All right, so now that we determined where our marks are at, our 0, our half, and our 1, so now we're going to take our fraction of 5/6, and we're just going to mark that on our number line. So we have the 5/6 here. We're just going to mark it right there. And then from there, we're just going to decide, are we closer to 0? Are we closer to 0? Are we closer to the half? Or are we closer to the whole 1?
Close to the whole 1.
Exactly. We're closer to the whole 1. We're right here. So now this kilometer of 5/6, instead of it being 5/6, it's going to turn into a whole 1. Just because we are estimating. All right, so now that we have that, we're going to move on to our 1/5. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to draw our number line. We're going to label our 0 from where it starts. And we're going to label our 1 from where it's going to end. And we have to also find where our half mark is at. But first, we're going to go ahead and label our, how many parts of this line is going to be?
5 parts.
Exactly. So it's 5 parts for this line. So we're going to label those. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 will be where our whole mark is at. And so when we label them, it'll be 1 over 5, 2 over 5, 3 over 5, 4 over 5, and 5 over 5. Now, like I said, in order to know where the half mark is at, you're simply just dividing by 2, which will give you half of whatever the number. And like I said previously, even numbers, they divide evenly. Odd numbers do not. Therefore, our point for our half this time is not going to be an exact whole number. It's going to be somewhere in between. So we're just going to take our denominator of 5. We're going to put that in the house, and we're just going to divide it by 2. So we're just doing that, and we're saying how many groups of 2 can we get out of 5?
2 groups.
Exactly. So we can get 2 groups, which is 2 times 2 is 4, right?
Yes.
So for this one, because it doesn't divide evenly, we've finished the math. And so with that, we have 1 left, right? So that 1 left is our numerator, and that 2 is still our denominator. So our half mark for 5, it's not 2, it's 2.5. So therefore, here's 2, here's 3. Right in the middle here is your half mark. And that's what we label our half mark at. And for these problems, you must know where it's at in order to answer the question. So now that we have that, we can go in and we could put our fraction. And we have, what is our fraction?
1 over 5.
1 over 5. So we're just going to mark that here. And then we're going to say to ourselves, is 1 over 5 closer to 0? Is it closer to 0? Or is it closer to a half? Or is it closer to the whole?
0.
Exactly. Great job. It is closer to the 0. It is right next to the 0. Half, you have to go another number and then a little bit. So therefore, this one is the shortest distance and it's closest. So now our 1/5 is equal to a 0 for this problem because we're estimating. All right, so now that we have 5 over 6 equals 1 whole, and we have 1 over 5 that equaled 0, it's said all together. That is our key word to let us know that we are adding. And when you add 1 plus 0, what do you get?
1.
Exactly. So the answer to the problem would be 1 kilometer is how much he ran altogether, estimating to the nearest half. All right, so for our second problem, Felicia cut 2 ribbons. The first ribbon was 10 over 12 yards long. The second ribbon was 6 over 10 yards long. About how much longer is the first ribbon than the second ribbon? Estimate to the closest half. All right, so this means we're doing similar and most likely just about the same. We're practicing how to get from 0 or how to estimate the fractions from 0, half, and a whole 1. So we're going to do the same thing like we just did with the last problem. We're going to take our first problem, and our first one, we're going to draw our number line. And it always starts at 0. And we look at our denominator, and how many partitions is this line split up into?
12.
Exactly. So that just means how many pieces is this line split into? So we're going to make our mark. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And this one is going to be our whole mark. And our denominator we said are 12s. So we have 1 over 12, like we just said, and all of those. I'm not going to repeat. I'm going to keep just trying to make sure I write it right. Maybe I should repeat, right? 6 over 12, 7 over 12, 8, 9. All right, we're almost there. And 12 over 12. All right, so we know we started at our 0, and we need to figure out where our half mark is. We have our 0 and we have our whole 1 mark, because everyone knows that if we have the same number over top of each other in fractions, that is equal to a whole. So this is where our whole number 1 is at. And we need to always figure out where is our half. So again, we take our denominator. What's our denominator?
12.
All right, so we have our 12. We're just going to divide that by 2. And how many groups of 2 can we get out of 12?
Get 6 groups.
All right, all you got to do is think about your multiplication, right? What times what gives me 12? 6. All right, so again, when it's an even number, it divides evenly, so you're at an even 6, and that is where your half mark is at. That is where your half mark is at the 6. All right, so now that we know that, we can go ahead and try to see how much is our first ribbon worth after estimating, right? And it is, what's the fraction that we have?
10 over 12.
We have a 10 over 12, so now we're going to mark that onto our number line. So here is our 10 over 12 mark. And again, we're just going to look now. This is the easy part where we just have to look and see where does our fraction land on the line, and is it closest to which number? So is it closest to the 0? Is it closest to the half, or is it closest to the whole?
To the whole.
Exactly. And another way you can tell is that you have 10 over 12, right? Well, that's not that far away from 12. 10 is closer to 12, right? Exactly. It's not closer to 6. 6 is further back down. So yeah, 10 over 12 is going to give you closer to 1. So that means our 10 over 12 is equal to 1 whole for this problem. All right, so moving on to the next ribbon, we have that one is 6 over 10 yards long. So we're going to draw our number line, and it's going to be split up into how many pieces?
10.
Exactly. So we have our 0, we have our 1 over 10, we have our 2 over 10, we have our 3 over 10, we have our 4, our 5, our 6, our 7, our 8, our 9, and then we have our whole number 1, which is our 10 over 10. All right, and so now that we have all of that drawn, then all we need to do is figure out where our half mark is at. So you could say it in your head, or you could write it on out. But I'm going to write it out for you guys. Our denominator is a 10. We're going to divide that by 2. You can ask yourself, 2 times what gives me 10?
5.
Exactly. Great job. 2 times 5 gives me 10. Nice even Steven. There's no remainders. So it is right at the 5 is where our half mark is labeled. Now that we have our number line completely labeled with all our fractions, our 0, our half, and our whole 1, we can now determine what our fraction is closest to. So we have a 6 over 10. We mark that right there. So now we just look at it and we ask ourselves, is it closer to 0? Is it closer to the half? Or is it closer to 1?
Closer to half.
Exactly. Great job. So 6 over 10 for this problem is going to be equal to 1/2. All right, so now that we've determined what our fractions was, we said we had 10 over 12, and that was equal to our whole 1. And then we said we had 6 over 10, and that was equal to 1/2. So for this problem, what are we doing? Let's look at it. It says about how much longer is the first than the second. When we comparing, what are we doing?
Get their add.
When you compare,
Or we gotta subtract.
exactly, you got to watch those key words. We're always, always, always. If we're comparing, and it said how much longer. That's your key word right there. So, how much longer, that signifies subtraction. So we are going to subtract. However, we have a whole number and we have a fraction. They cannot be right up underneath each other because whole numbers go there and fractions go here. Right? Right. So we can't do anything until we do what? What do we have to do?
Make a fraction of the whole number.
Exactly. How do we do that?
We have to borrow.
Exactly. Great job. You remember. We're going to borrow from this 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that whole 1, we can't bring it in as a whole 1, right? We have to bring it in as a fraction.
Yeah,
So,
1 over 1.
1 over 1? What's our denominator?
A 12. There's a 12 over 12.
No. Well, this is no more. We have a whole number 1. This fraction here is what?
2. So 2 over 2.
Thank you. So that's what we bring it in as. We bring it in as a whole number 1. For this problem, it's a 2. So it's a 2 over 2. So now our denominators, right? Because that's the rules of fraction. They have to be the same to add them or subtract them, right? So we had to make them the same. Now they're the same. Now all we got to do is circle, remember, our numerators. We can write our denominator. We already know is the 2. And our number sentence is what?
2 simply 1.
And how much is left?
1 root.
That's right, 1. So that means we have an answer of 1/2. So 1/2 ribbon. So how much longer is the first ribbon than the second? It's 1/2 yards longer. 1/2 yard, not more than 1. That's only a half. So it's 1/2 yard longer would be the answer. And that's the first one. So the first one is, the first ribbon is 1/2 yard longer than the second ribbon. All right, so for our next problem is if you are estimating to the nearest half, which expression could be used to estimate the sum for 2 over 5 plus 5 over 8? And our choices are A, 1 plus 1, B, 0 plus 1/2, C, 1/2 plus 1/2, or D, 1/2 plus 1. All right, so we are going to now figure out which one would it be. And how would we do that? By making our number line and actually solving the problem. So the first one we're going to do is we're going to take the 2 over 10. We're going to draw our number line. And how many times are we cutting it up?
10.
Exactly. So we got our things. Wait, what? All right, so we got our stuff up here. All right, so do you remember from the last problem, guys? If you do, drop me a comment down below, but let me know if you remember that what times what gives you 10.
5.
Oh, there we go. 5 times 2 give us 10, and that's where we're going to put our half mark. And our problem says we have 2 over 10, so we're going to mark that. And we're going to ask ourselves, we're going to say, is it closer to 0, 1/2, or 1 whole?
0.
Exactly. So far, so that means 2 over 10 is equal to 0. And moving on, we just gonna go ahead. We're gonna go to 508. We're gonna draw that number line just the same way. How many times are we cutting it up?
8.
There we go. So we're just gonna mark those. All right, now that we have those marked, and like I say, if you want to always remember, is just putting your denominator inside the house and dividing by 2 to get your half. Or you can ask yourself, what times 2 will get you your denominator? Either which way you want to look at it.
4 groups.
Exactly. Because 2 divided by 8 is 4. Or we could have just said 2 times what gives you 8 is the same exact thing. And that answer was 4. So 4 is where our half mark is at. And now that we have all of those labeled, we can go right in and label our 5/8 and ask ourselves the question. Is it closer to 0, half, or 1?
Half.
Exactly. So that means the 5/8 is closer to 1/2. And for this problem, they wanted to know what would be the answer if you added those. So that means our expression needs to say 0 plus 1/2, right? And which one is that? A, B, C, or D?
B.
Exactly. Great job. The answer is B. 0 plus 1/2. And that is correct. Great job. All right, so for our next problem, we're going to estimate the sum of 2/6 plus 9/10. And our choice answers are A, 0, B, 1/2, C, 1, or D, 1 and 1/2. All right, so we're going to do the same thing. We're taking our first fraction of 2/6, and we are going to make us a number line. How many times we cutting it up?
6.
Exactly. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and our 6 mark. And so we're going to ask ourselves either or question. You're going to say 2 divided by 6 is what? Or 2 times what equals 6? Either which way to get your half.
Three groups.
Exactly. So either way, we get a 3. And there's our half mark. And so now we can label our fraction of 2/6. And next, all we have to do is decide, is it closer to 0? Is it closer to the half? Or is it closer to 1?
To half.
Exactly. Great job. So now this one is going to equal 1/2. Let me see. What do I want to write that? I'm going to put it up here next to the actual problem. So this is going to be 1/2 now. We're going to see what we're going to add it with, because we're going to draw our next number line in just 1 second. All right, so now we can draw our second one, and that is going to be cut up in how many times?
10.
Exactly. So we have our 0.
4 groups.
Nope.
2 groups.
2 and what else? Remember, that doesn't go even. That's an odd number. So we have something left over because 2 times 2 is only 4. What about that half we have left over? 2.5. So that's going to be right up in here. Is where our half mark is going to be at. In between 2 and in between 3. And we're going to label our 9/10. And then lastly, we're just going to look to see, is that closer to 0? Is it closer to the half? Oh, I'm sorry. What did I do? You let me do something. I wasn't even paying attention, guys. And nobody stopped me. That's a 10. Why am I doing 5? So, yeah, that's not where the half is, guys. I hope somebody typed down there and said, that's not the half. No, that's not. That's the half of 5. So if you ever need to know what half of 5 is, it's 2.5. But we're doing 10. So it should have said 10 divided by 2, or 2 times what equals 10. That's what it should have said. So what's the answer now?
5 groups.
Exactly. My bad, and my bad. So this is where the half is at. Because I'm looking saying, why are we so far from half? And that's the other time you can tell you make a mistake, because you shouldn't be this close saying you're next to half. All right, so 9/10 is down here, though. So are we closer to 0? Are we closer to 1/2? Or are we closer to 1?
To 1.
Exactly. So now this one equals 1. Put that up there with our problem. So if we do the math, the thing about adding a whole number to a fraction is different than subtracting, because you have 1 whole and you have 1/2, and that's just what you have. You don't have to do anything else. They just come together and becomes a mixed number. So the answer is going to be which one? Out of your choices, A, B, C, or D?
D.
There we go. Great job. The answer is D, 1 and 1/2. All right, so for our next problem is, if you are estimating to the nearest half, which expression could be used to find the difference for 3/8 take away 1/6? Our choices are A, 1/2 take away 0, B, 1/2 take away 1/2, C, 1 take away 1/2, or D, 1 take away 1. All right, so as we've been doing, and we're going to continue, right? We're going to draw our first number line. We're going to cut that up into 8 pieces. And we're going to label those. All right, and we're going to write our number sentence to find our half.
Four groups.
Exactly, great job. Now that we have that all squared away, we're just going to label our fraction. And then we're going to decide, is it closer to 0, half, or 1?
The half.
Exactly. So that first part of our number sentence should start to say 0 takeaway. Okay, so let's draw our second part of our equation, which would be the 6th line. And we draw our 6 in the house, 2 on the outside, or 2 times what gives me 6 for our half mark. What's it going to be, sir?
3 groups.
All right, there we go. Great job. And that's where our half mark is. Now we can label our fraction and ask ourselves that big old question. Is it closer to the 0, our fraction? Is it closer to the half, or is it closer to the whole?
0.
Here we go. All right. Okay, so I wrote something different because you said this one was what?
You're
One.
big.
Yeah, I know, but you said it was closer to the half, and I wrote 0. I'm tripping because I'm saying like, well, I don't see it right. 3/8 closer to the half. That's what you said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I should have wrote it out when I wrote it. So let me write that over here. 3/8. In case I confused anyone, it's closer to the half, and this one was 1/6 is closer to the 0. And that gives us a number sentence of 1/2 take away 0. And which one would be the right one? A, B, C, or D? Your choices. A, B, C, or D?
A.
Thank you. Great job. All right. All right. There's that. Great job. All right. So for our next problem, Casey used sidewalk chalk to draw 2 lines on the sidewalk. One line was 1/12 yard long, and the other line was 3/4 yard long. Estimate the total length of the 2 lines together to the closest half. And our choices is A, 0, B, 1/2, C, 1, or D, 1 1/2. All right, so we are going to go right in and draw this number line. And we're going to split this up in 12 parts. Got our 0, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay?
Six groups.
There we go. Great job. All right. We ask ourselves, divided by or multiplied by 6 is where our half mark is at. So now we are going to mark our 1/12. And we're going to ask ourselves, where is it at on the number line? Is it closer to the 0? Is it closer to the half? Or is it closer to the 1?
0.
There we go. So that means this fraction of 1/12 equals 0. All right, so moving on to the second part, we're going to draw that number line. We cutting that up into our 1, 2, 3, 4 little parts. We ask ourselves the same question, putting the 4 in the house on the side, or 2 times what gives us 4?
2.
Mm-hmm.
Groups.
So that is where our half is at. And our fraction is 3/4. So we mark that. This is where our 1 is. And so we ask ourselves, this one could be considered a little tricky. So it's either 0, half, or whole.
The half.
No. It's going to be the whole, because once you go past the 2, anything past is going to get you more than 2. 2 is where the half is. But because it's all the way to a whole 3, it's really almost 4 now. So we're going to go with it being a whole 1. Okay? So 3/4 translates into a whole 1. Now the problem asks us to do the total, which means we are always adding. So 1 Well, our first fraction was 0. So 0 plus 1 is how much?
Which one?
And so the answer is 1. So that means it's 1 yard long. And that's the thing, when you do these, you want to keep the unit.
Yeah, that's what C.
C is going to be the right answer. Great job. All right, so for our final problem for today, we're going to estimate the sum of 6 over 10 plus 5 over 12. And our choice answers are A, 0, B, 1/2, C, 1, or D, 1 1/2. So now, what's the first thing that we do to solve this problem?
You have to look at number line.
All right, so the first one we're going to take is the 6 over 10. And we're going to make a number line for that. What are we cutting this line up into?
10.
Exactly. So we start out with a 0. We cut up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. For our whole one, we label all of those. And we ask ourselves the question, with 10 in the house and 2 on the outside, or 2 times what gives us 10?
5 groups.
Exactly, great job. And that is where our half mark is at the 5. And so now we're going to label our fraction. And we're going to ask ourselves, is it closer to the 0, the half, or the 1?
The half.
It is. It's closer to the half because 1 is very, very, very far. All right. So that means 6 over 10 equals 1/2. Great job. All right. So for the next number line, we're just going to draw that out. And how long is that going to be? For our second fraction?
12.
Exactly. So we're just going to label that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, and so we're going to write our sentence to get us our half. Is either one you want to use.
6 groups.
Exactly, great job. All right, so this is where our half mark is at. And we're going to label our 5 over 12. And then we're going to ask ourselves the deciding question. Is it closer to 0, half, or 1?
The half.
Exactly, great job. So that means 5 over 12 equals 1/2 for this problem. And we're just going to take since it's lined up, we're just going to make that our equation. We already have 2 for our denominator, so we keep that. We circle our numerator. And our number sentence is what?
1 plus 1 equals 2.
Equals 2. And 2 over 2 equals what?
1.
Equals 1 whole. So what's going to be the right answer?
C.
C. Great job, Jamin. Awesome job. You did great. You guys did great. Pat yourself on the back. And I'm so happy that you got something out of it. You did really good. I'm proud of you. So everyone, that concludes the end of my video. I really hope that you enjoyed it and got something out of it. And always remember, it's not what you don't know, but what you're willing to learn. Until the next time, I hope to see you there.